You want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
You can't handle the truth!
Well, we're giving you the Michigan Sports Truth Week in Review, the show that reveals facts, truth, research, and statistics and never messes around. We lay down the entire truth about everything regarding your Detroit and Michigan sports teams, no matter if it's good or bad. No junk, no entertainment, no homerism, no coddling, no pop culture, no opinions, no shilling, and no fluff. Head over to our website at MichiganSportsTruth.com and like our Facebook page, The Michigan Sports Truth. The hosts of the Michigan Sports Truth podcast do not take any suggestions or criticism from any member of its audience on how it should be run. It is up to the host to decide what they want to cover. They also do not intend to be any amount of popular in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Additionally, the views of the audience, right or wrong, do not reflect the actual truth revealed on this program.
Episode 306 is now in session, but before we get to the first topic, we want to announce that our show is now additionally on Twitter at Michigan_Truth. So everybody, please go to your Twitter handles and follow Michigan_Truth. The Michigan Sports Truth has a new Twitter handle. Also a Reddit account, Michigan Sports Truth. That being said, it's time to get to work right away and get to the Big Ten tournament. But actually, let's start in chronological order. Sophomore guard Miles Bridges for the Michigan State Spartans.
Valentine for the win!
Sophomore guard Miles Bridges of the Michigan State Spartans had to pay $40 to charity after a dinner his parents had with an agent before being reinstated. That's why he was cleared to play for the rest of the season. Also, he's among 15 players named as Wooden Watch finalists. So, Miles Bridges played in the entire Big Ten tournament. The Spartans managed to make it to the semifinals after getting the first round bye and then beating the Wisconsin Badgers 63-60 before running into the upstart Michigan Wolverines, losing 75-64.
For three, yes sir!
Michigan started in the first round beating the Iowa Hawkeyes 77-71 in overtime to complete the three-game season series sweep. Then in the quarterfinal round, they took good care of the Nebraska Cornhuskers 77-58. Mo Wagner had a much better game than in the first round where he fouled out. 20 points against Nebraska, had a double-double along the way. And then in a game where Miles Bridges fouled out, which was key, the Wolverines, again, beat the Spartans 75-64. They showed more heart, a little bit more heart than the Spartans had. The first half was great. The Michigan Wolverines started pulling away a little bit, and they managed to hang on by 11, and then they faced an 8th-ranked Purdue Boilermakers team, and they played solid defense. And they had freshman center John Teske playing real well as an X factor to this maize and blue men's basketball team led by head coach John Beilein. And they led by as many as 16, and they beat the Purdue Boilermakers 75-66 to win the Big Ten Tournament Championship.
Yeah, it was a great weekend for Michigan. They started off a little rusty, a little iffy with that win over Iowa in overtime, coming out with a strong second half. Iowa ended up needing a end of the game or end of regulation shot to put it into overtime, but then Michigan was able to take control. And I think after that game, they got on a great roll, obviously having won the Big Ten tournament, but they got into a rhythm. And that's what a tournament play is all about. It's not about sometimes who has the best players or who has the best game. It's about a team that gets a new rhythm and comes together. The downside for Michigan is they will have a complete week off, actually a week and a half, before they'll have to play their next game in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So the key for them is going to be to keep that rhythm going as best they can in practice. It is going to be good for them just because they do have some rest coming to them. But over the last 3 wins that they've had over Nebraska, Michigan State, and then Purdue today, they were just in an incredible rhythm. I think that this is probably John Beilein's best defensive squad that he has had over the course of his career at Michigan, and that's saying something because that 2013 squad that made it to the final game against Louisville was a very good team, and I think that this team is a little bit better on defense. As you mentioned, John Teskey coming up big in the Big Ten championship game, 14 points off the bench, including 12 in the first half when there was some early foul trouble for Mo Wagner, and also some other guys off the bench that just weren't performing as well as they needed to be. And Teskey came in and gave them a big lift, and that's one of the X factors over Purdue that they didn't have in the first 2 games, and those close losses to the Boilermakers, is they didn't have another inside presence to combat Haas, the big-time player for Purdue. And with Teskey coming in and asserting himself with those 12 points in the first half, they gave Michigan a big lift, and then they got into the second half and really clamped down on defense. Xavier Simpson, he only had 10 points, but man, he was great on defense throughout the entire tournament. And I made the comment today before the game was played that, actually, I said the same thing yesterday, that Michigan, everything kind of runs through Mo Wagner, but the backcourt was going to have to be superlative or better to beat Michigan State and Purdue, and that's what they were. Simpson, Abdur-Rahman, and Charles Matthews played great lockdown defense throughout the entire tournament.
I think his name is Chris
and that
Matthews.
was what really keyed them to the win, because you can look at the offensive side of the ball, and there is some holes there for Michigan. Free throw shooting is one that they're going to have to clean up. They're going to have to get some more contributions from guys off the bench. But overall, Michigan defensively was the toast of the tournament, and they really turned on against a great Purdue team offensively that had beaten them twice in the regular season, and Michigan was able to lock them down and make enough shots to win the ball game. And now they'll move on to wherever they get seated. Obviously, having the early conference tournament allows them some rest, but also it's going to have to wait to find out what seed they are. A lot of people are having them at the 4, maybe the 3 line. Is going to depend on how some of these conference tournaments in the next week shake out with some of those teams. Michigan State now, they were looking to be a number 1 seed. I don't know if they're going to be a number 1 seed now. It's kind of hard to put a 4-loss team at a 2 seed, but I think the NCAA now, with the way that they're looking at how they see these tournaments, it's not only about the body of work that you have, but it's also how you're playing down the stretch and what type of wins do you have against quality opponents. And that's always been a component, but I think the NCAA really has tried to standardize how they're seeding teams in this tournament. So it'll be interesting to see, because Michigan right now, they don't have anybody that is going to be playing in these conference tournaments later in the rounds that they have played earlier this year. North Carolina is really the only team that I can think of that might make a run in the ACC tournament. They lost to them, so really for them to jump up anywhere, North Carolina is going to have a big performance in their conference tournament to boost Michigan's profile. And with the Big Ten tournament win, I don't see them getting any less than a 4. I would think that they would get a 3 seed, but again, like I said, it remains to be seen how everything shakes out with all the other teams. But just a great command performance by Michigan in these last 3 games, and they are back-to-back Big Ten tournament champions, and right now probably playing as good, at least defensively, as any team in college basketball that there is right now. Michigan State came to that game, and that was a circle game for them. That was a red letter game for them because of the way that Michigan beat them at their house in January. And not only did Michigan come to play, but they matched and actually trumped Michigan State's toughness in that game. And you said it earlier, Michigan State They came to play. They came to play hard, but Michigan didn't back down, and they got punched in the mouth a little bit in that first half, and then they counter-punched their way to a decision over the Michigan State Spartans in that semifinal, and used that momentum to carry on into today to beat Purdue.
Yeah, another mistake I want to correct for myself. John Teskey is actually a sophomore, not a freshman, but yeah, Michigan State.
Well, he feels like a freshman because he didn't play a ton last year, so it's an easy mistake to make. But you're right. I mean, you've got to really, when you look at Michigan, people talk about them as a veteran team, and that's true to some degree. But they also have some guys like Xavier Simpson. Isaiah Livers left with an injury. He did come back later in the game for a little bit, but he wasn't much of a factor after that injury, so they had to dip into the bench a little bit. Duncan Robinson played 32 minutes. That's not a normal game for Duncan Robinson, but he came off the bench, and then John Teskey having to fill in to the rotation after Livers had left. He was really the big story for them in the first half, got them some leverage, got them into the halftime with a lead, and then they clamped down defensively in the second half. And like I said before, Michigan defensively right now playing better than I think any team in college basketball on the defensive end. And when you're talking about an NCAA tournament with short turnarounds and limited time to prepare for your opponent, especially in the second round and in the regional final round, that's going to come in handy for them because there are going to be games where they're going to struggle offensively. They're going to have to piece it together. But when you have a good defense, you can build on that, and you're going to get a lot of confidence knowing that the other team probably isn't going to outscore you and outshoot you. They're going to have to outwork you. And I think that John Beilein right now, for my money, probably the Big Ten tournament coach the coach of the tournament. He didn't win the Big Ten Coach of the Year. That honor went to Chris Holtman of Ohio State. But boy, it's really tough to say and really argue with John Beilein's tournament success. Very good at getting his team to peak at the right time. And right now, I would say the only thing that can really hamper Michigan, they're going to have a very long layoff before that first round game in the NCAA tournament. What they've got to look for and hope for is that they get a seed that allows them some good matchups in that first and second round that they can use as a springboard into the Sweet 16. They're a team right now that none of the high seeds want to match up against, simply because of the way that they're playing defense. And if the team gets hot, I mean, I really don't think offensively that they were explosive at any time during this Big Ten tournament. They had short spurts, but they didn't have games where they completely dominated on the offensive end from start to finish. But if they start to hit from outside and they start to work that inside-outside game with Wagner and Abdur-Rahman and Xavier Simpson from outside, plus the defense they have, they're going to be a tough out in the NCAA tournament. And if you're a team that has Final Four aspirations, you don't want to see them in your bracket simply because you know that's going to be a tough game for you.
Isaiah Livers may not be a necessary offensive factor for the Michigan Wolverines, but he does play some defense. He tries to knock the ball away, poke the ball away, maybe steal it. I saw him do it 2 times at one point in one defensive transition for the Michigan Wolverines. I thought I was impressed by that. I thought the Wolverines kind of missed part of that part of their defense for a little bit when he got tripped by that one Purdue player and twisted his ankle, but came back a little later. But defense is the name of the game.
He was Mr. Basketball in Michigan, and he was a highly prized recruit. But offensively, the game in high school is so much different than it is in the college game, especially when you're talking about a system that John Beilein runs. But Isaiah Livers has really stepped up to the plate defensively, and that's what I've been most impressed about him, because a lot of people are looking to him to be a secondary scoring option, but really he's turned into quite the defensive wizard. And that's a key contribution from a kid where a lot of people expected him to be at the fore of the offense, but instead he's really started to get into his role on this team, and that is of a defensive role. And he's been able to do that. Unfortunately, today he goes down with the injury. That's the one thing with the long layoff that you can be happy for Michigan, is that he should have adequate time to heal that twisted ankle. And when it comes to NCAA tournament time, he should be fresh and ready to go.
Mm-hmm. So the NCAA tournament is going to start next week. Not this week, but next week, because the MAC tournament starts tomorrow. Central Michigan Chippewas winning 2 straight, 75-51 over the Ball State Cardinals at home. That was a smashing win. And then they had their game against Western, round 2, postponed due to the shooting incident at Campbell Hall at CMU. Thankfully, everybody on campus survived except for James Davis Jr.'s parents, which he deceased by his own. And our prayers still go out to everybody that survived. The suspect, that shooter, is now in custody. Already now in custody. Just so our Spreaker, just to make sure our Spreaker, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio listeners know that he was in custody Saturday way early morning at a little after 2 a.m. after Friday night. The shooting occurred at exactly 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. But that being said, CMU took care of Western 84-71. Western, before that, lost to the Eastern Michigan Eagles 74-58. Eastern then took care of then upset the Toledo Rockets on the road 71-69.
I love it.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, big win for Eastern Michigan, defensively playing very well against Toledo. That's going to give them some confidence. Now, they'll be the 3 seed. That's what I talked about last week. The only team that really had some room to go up was Eastern. And they were able to do that with 2 wins this week over Western and then Toledo on Friday. So they'll be heading into MAC tournament as the 3 seed. That's going to help them out tremendously. They should get a game on Thursday with a team that has already played 1 game on an on-campus site. And then they'll be able to play a team with a little bit of fatigue on their legs. And I think that for Eastern, this is going to be a big run for them. They hit their 20th win with that win over Toledo on Friday. That earned Rob Murphy a contract extension as the head coach of the Eagles. And now we'll see what happens in the MAC tournament. Because if this team makes a run in the MAC tournament, I think they're going to have to win out to get to the NCAAs. But you never know what's going to happen, especially when conference tournament season hits. You never know who's going to go out early. And teams that need wins sometimes go out early, and some teams that surprise you spring up to the finals. You know, you look at the Big Ten tournament, Rutgers won its first 2 games and gave Purdue a real fight before finally petering out on Friday. When you look at how these conference tournaments play out, Eastern Michigan just has to take care of its business. But if they win 2 or 3 games in that tournament, you've got to look at them with 23 wins and think that they may have a chance, especially that win over Toledo. And that really helped their profile. I don't know if they have a lot RPI-wise to make it into the tournament, but you win 2 or 3 more games, you've got 23, 22 wins on the season. It should be solidly entrenched in the NIT, and they'll be able to make a postseason appearance for that program.
Mm-hmm. CMU is going to play Bowling Green and Mount Pleasant Monday at 7. WMU is home against Akron Monday at 3:45. Eastern, the 3 seed, getting that first round bye. MAC tournament starts tomorrow. Like I mentioned before, now he transitioned from college basketball to pro basketball in the Pistons.
Left sideline 3, and he answers.
Pistons still can't get the job done. They got smashed 123-94 in Toronto. They they got one big win over the Milwaukee Bucks, 110-87 last Wednesday, and then they went back to their losing ways, lacking defense again. 115-106 in overtime at the Orlando Magic. 104 points allowed in regulation and 11 in a 5-minute overtime period to the worst team. What was the worst team in the Eastern Conference, at least, to say the least, going into that game? The Magic jumped the Hawks again with that shocking win, and then the Pistons lose to the Miami Heat, the team that the Pistons have been trailing for that 8th and final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. 105-96, the Heat beat the Pistons in that game. Pistons, last I checked, after that game, was last night 4 games back of the Heat for the 8th and final playoff spot in the East. Still 9th place, but the Pistons are faltering. They got the Cavaliers, Raptors again, the Bulls, and then they go out on the West Coast again.
Yeah, you talk about that. They beat the Bucks on Wednesday. The Raptors cleaned their clock last Monday, and then they lost that game to the Magic in overtime, where they completely collapsed in an overtime period, and then losing yesterday to the Heat by 9. Stumbling down the stretch here are the Pistons, and they went all in with that Blake Griffin trade, and right now it's not looking like a great gamble. Plus the fact that they're probably, in all reality, probably not going to have that first-round pick. They're going to end up with a lottery pick that they're not going to be able to utilize, and they're still somehow only 9th in the Eastern Conference due to the fact that the Eastern Conference is not very good. But still, that 9th spot is even more precarious simply because they go 1-3 on the week. They now are 4 games solidly back of the Heat, and they're going to have to really turn it on here in the last 19 games to be able to make a push. It was a big game against the Heat. It was a game that they really needed to win. It's coupled with that loss against the Magic, who are not a very good basketball team. Those 2 losses hurt. The win against the Bucks was good for them, but those 2 losses on back-to-back nights to Orlando and then Miami,
especially to the Magic,
really hurt them, because those are games you have to have if you're going to be in the playoffs. Not only being you in the Magic, but then the team that's right above you in the Miami Heat. That's a 2-game swing right there, because instead of 4, if you beat them, now you're only 2 games back, but instead they don't, and now they have 4 games to cover with 19 to go. It's going to be a tall task for a team that right now is still struggling on the offensive end and not very much better on the defensive end.
Yeah. Going to have to wait until the offseason to get a backup center. That's all I'm waiting for now.
Yeah, the one thing you look at the Pistons, the one thing that stands out to me away from Little Caesars Arena, they're just downright atrocious. Only 9-21 right now on the road. So if you're looking at the reason that the Pistons aren't going to make the playoffs, you can parse your way through all the statistics and the playoff and the play and the performance. But you've got to be able to win on the road to be considered a contender in the NBA. And even with their hot start to begin the season, they are still only 9-21 to date on the road, and that's just pitiful. You've got to win those road games. You've got to go at least, I would say, if you're going to be a successful NBA team, you've got to go at least 500 on the road, or be at least close to that. Right now, the Pistons are not even close to that, and they have 19 games left on the schedule. They're going to have to get that turned around in a hurry. I don't have a lot of confidence that they'll be able to do so, just watching how they played against Orlando and against Miami. They're going to have to go on the road. Like you said, they're going to go out west again, and those are going to be tough games. And when you're not very good on the road, there's not a lot of confidence to be had that you're going to be able to pull some of those games out.
Yeah, with or without Reggie Jackson, you got to win on the road, period.
Yeah, and the Reggie Jackson thing is kind of getting old, not only because it's taken a long time for him to get back, but also you haven't had him for a long time. So at this point, you would think that the rotation that they do have, even after all the trades at the trade deadline, you would think that they would be able to settle into some sort of rhythm now that they've had those players there, and they just haven't been able to do so. I know they're missing Reggie Jackson. He is a key component of that team, but just the way that they've played in the backcourt, it's not been good. And when you have backups that are playing in a starting role, Stan Van Gundy has played mix and match with that lineup almost all season long, and he just hasn't found that combination that's going to work for a consistent period of time. And there's a lot of questions as to, is Stan Van Gundy, the coach, done as far as what he can get the Pistons to be? He's one of those guys. He's going to get you to that next step, but you're going to need somebody else to carry you the rest of the way. And right now it feels like the Pistons have kind of hit their ceiling with Stan Van Gundy as a middle-of-the-road Eastern Conference team that may or may not make the playoffs.
Right. And speaking of not making the playoffs, the Red Wings sure as hell are not making the playoffs either.
No.
Three straight regulation losses, 2-1 at the St. Louis Blues, 4-3 at the Winnipeg Jets, 4-1 at the Minnesota Wild. Good for the tanking system. Keep it up. The Red Wings now back to fourth worst in the East again. Dropping like a fly again, like good little boys.
Yeah, this week was not good for them. Only scoring 1 goal in 2 of their losses. And then the Jets hung on to win that game on Friday. Detroit was down 4-1 at one point. The Jets did manage to hang on for that 4-3 victory, but the game against the Blues,
I thought it was 3-2 when Matthews scored.
Came on in his second game back-to-back.
I don't even know.
They had played the previous night in Minnesota, so you would think the Red Wings, having the luxury of some rest, would be the better team. But the Blues just took it to them. On the defensive end, they scored enough to win, and then the Red Wings go out to Winnipeg, lose that game, and then they go to Minnesota tonight, and it was a close game into the third period, but the Wild salted away and win the game 4-1.
Sure.
And this is just kind of a microcosm of how the Red Wings season has gone. It's close, but not good enough, and that's what they've been able to do. A lot of the times they're able to keep games close. They have a lot of one-goal games, but the problem is they're not winning a lot of them. And in today's NHL, there's a lot of close games to be had. The difference between good and bad is not as much as it was 15 to 20 years ago. So those games that you lose in regulation are going to be tough, and you've got to be able to at least get some of those games to overtime, and maybe you get lucky in overtime. They just have not been able to do that all season long. They're not good in overtime. I think they've won maybe 1 game, actually 2 now, with that Rangers win in overtime last week. Just not good in overtime. So you're talking about a lot of games where they're losing points or giving up points. And when you're talking about a team that has little to no margin for error, you're losing a lot of games that, yes, they're close, but a lot of the times I think that those games are a little bit more dominated by the other team than the score will show. The Blues really dominated the Red Wings for the majority of that game on Wednesday. They only won 2-1, but the Red Wings didn't mount any serious threat down the stretch. And then today against the Wild, after that goal in the first period, they really didn't have a whole lot of offense going for them. And Devin Dubnyk shut them down, and then the Wild broke it open in the third period, and were able to pull away. So this Red Wings team obviously not going to get any better anytime soon, and they have a lot of work to do in the draft and the offseason. Depending on where the salary cap is going to fall, they may have some space to play with. They have guys that they have to re-sign, and we're going to see now, after Tomas Tatar was moved, what they're able to do with that cap space, because they have 3 guys that they need to pay this year. They need to pay Anthony Mantha, Andreas Athanasiou, and Dylan Larkin. They're going to have to shell out a lot more money than they're giving those guys right now. And not only do that, but they're also going to have to find some other players and try to get better. And I think that for them, the best thing they can do is lose as many games as possible and try to get as many ping pong balls as you can get, because
especially in regulation.
They really need an impact scorer, a big name impact scorer, and it may take a couple years. They need to find somebody that they can go to when they need a goal, and right now they just don't have that player.
No, they don't. Most certainly not Jared Coro. He's not really a true backup goaltender behind Jimmy Coward. Yep, but Tomas Tatar was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights before those 3 losses for a 2018 first rounder. That's this year's draft. A 2019 second rounder and a 2021 third round draft pick. But they don't trade Mike Green, and that's one thing that most of us were concerned about, to say the least.
Yeah, it surprised the heck out of me that Mike Green is still in the Red Wings uniform. He's at the end of his contract. He's an unrestricted free agent after the end of this year. For all the people, the flag wavers that say he likes playing in Detroit, well, of course he does right now. He's getting paid a good salary for what he does, but that doesn't mean he's going to re-sign with the Red Wings in any shape or form. So that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to get anything for him. They're going to have to see if they can re-sign him. If they can't, they lose him for nothing. And with the recent injury that he had, I know that scared off a lot of teams and lowered the price. But I think for Ken Holland, that was a misstep simply because you're not going to get any better. And even if you don't get much for him because of the injury, you try to get the best return you can. And any asset is a good asset when you're talking about an unrestricted free agent, especially somebody like Mike Green, who is getting up there in age and maybe has one big contract left in him for him. And it was really surprising that he didn't get traded. There were other players that were also had offers made on them. Luke Glendening was one of them. They didn't move him at the deadline. And again, I go back to Ken Holland's ineptness and inability to make a deal. He was able to trade Peter Mrazek for a 4th-round pick. It's a conditional pick. Could turn into something as high as a 2nd-round pick, depending on how the Flyers do this season in the playoffs. But Luke Glendening and Mike Green aren't going to be there when the Red Wings are back to being good. And if you can get anything for those guys, it would be a win. But Ken Holland decides, yet again in his infinite stupidity, to not trade them, not get assets, not build for the future, and to lay out the same tired line of, we like to have them in the room, they're going to teach the young guys how to play. They're not going to do that. It's just a fallacy that Ken Holland continues to propagate, that these older players that he assigned to bad contracts are going to be the ones that are going to nurture the younger kids along. Well, they can't do that if they're playing and those young kids aren't. And there's plenty of guys on the Red Wings roster, both in the NHL and the AHL level, that can do what Luke Glendening does right now for a fraction of the cost to the team. And if you can get a 5th-round pick for Luke Glendening, I would have signed the paper as soon as somebody said it. I would have just said yes, hung up the phone, got the paper, and sent it into the league office. Because at this point, there's no reason to have him on the roster when you're not going to get any better. And you can use that 5th-round pick either as an asset or you can use it as a trade chip down the line. You need to stockpile picks. And it's great to have them in the top 3 rounds, but if you can't get that, the more picks, the better chance you have on hitting on somebody that's going to be a effective NHL player. And that's where the failure comes from Ken Holland. Not that he moved Tomas Tatar. I thought that move was unexpected, but I think that he got a decent return for him. Some of the people are saying that he got a great return. Las Vegas is right now 2nd in the West, so you're looking at probably anywhere between 21 and 29 pick for that spot that they got for Tomas Tatar, and then the other 2 picks are futures picks. You have no idea how good Las Vegas is going to be in 3 years. So that was fine. It does free up the cap room for them to sign some of the younger players that I mentioned earlier, but to not trade Mike Green, to not trade Luke Glendening for anything was a massive failure, and it really just is something that personifies Ken Holland's last 10 years as GM, which is too afraid to do anything, too afraid to make a big move, or too afraid to invested in for some reason, and that's what happens is they get nothing for those two players who are now still playing on a roster of a bad team.
Yeah, and Ken Holland makes that same excuse where it'll take 10 to 15 years to rebuild, which is not the case. Frank
Well,
Badger
they do.
pointed out.
If you do it this way, when you don't go and make trades for assets, yes, it will take 10 to 15 years because you don't have enough picks. You can rebuild in a shorter time frame if you do it right. Now, that's not to say there's cautionary tales out there from teams like the Buffalo Sabres or the Edmonton Oilers, but to not try is basically saying that it's impossible, and it's not impossible. Granted, you need to have a real high pick and get a great player, a generational type player like an Austin Matthews, but look at Toronto. Look at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, when they made the draft picks of Evgeny Malkin, Marc-Andre Fleury, and Sidney Crosby, they had to be very, very bad for a very long time before they were able to get good with those players. And the same thing is true of any type of rebuild. If you do it correctly, you're going to have to go through some growing pains. You're going to have to play some young kids. You're going to have to sacrifice some points in the short term for a long-term gain. And Toronto right now is starting to reap the benefits of that. And that's the same path that the Red Wings have to look at, is sometimes you just have to be really terrible to get really good. And that's how sports is. Now, you cannot stay at the top of the heap for too long. You look at a team like the Chicago Blackhawks, they're doing the same thing right now. They're not going to be in the playoffs this year. They have a bunch of guys on some contracts that aren't great for them. Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith are two of them. And some real questions have to be answered by that team in the offseason because they're not getting any better. They're not getting any younger. And they have some real big contracts they're paying to guys that aren't able to produce with the subpar supporting cast that they have. So when you're looking at a rebuild, if you do it the smart way, it doesn't need to take that long. It's not guaranteed to work, and I will grant you that. It is never guaranteed to work, but there is nothing that is guaranteed to work. And the way that the Red Wings are trying to hang on to some of this level of competitiveness, it's really just an affront to the fans that you're basically telling them, hey, we're going to be okay if we just keep doing this. You're not okay. You're going to miss the playoffs for a second year in a row. You're not going to add any players that are going to significantly impact your team. You didn't get assets for the two players that you could have traded at the trade deadline that wouldn't have made a difference in how they finished this year. And yet you want to tell us that they're good to have and they're valuable members of the team. This is a business, and the business is to win cups. And if you're not going to get closer to that goal, then you are not doing your job. And that's what every team in the league does, is they have to get close to winning the cup, or closer. They have to make progress. And the Red Wings right now, in the last 2 years, have not made any progress in getting any better in contending for a Stanley Cup. And Ken Holland, with his staid old ways of loyalty, keeping guys on contract, signing guys on contracts that are atrocious, and handing out no movement clauses like they were free men's at the hotel. You just hamstring yourself and put your success on the backs of those players that are on terrible contracts, and you can't get out of them. And so if it goes bad, like it has now, not only do you have the work to do to get better players into the system and onto your roster, but you have guys that are blocking them because you can't get rid of those contracts. So, again, it's just one of those things where it's more of the same. And for one step forward that they take with trading Tomas Tatar, they take 2 steps back in not trading Glendening or Green for anything at the trade deadline. And they get rewarded for it this week with 3 straight regulation losses.
Yeah. The way Ken Holland has operated, especially the last 2 years, has turned this Red Wings organization into a slow but sure train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it from 2012 on, they have slowly and surely declined. And that's what happens when you don't make any moves to not necessarily stave that off, but improve yourself on the back end. And it's okay to be bad. It's okay to not have success. But when you're going to do that, you have to make sure that you're putting the building blocks in place for when you do start to have success. You have a good farm system. You have it stocked with young players that you expect to make an impact, and you work forward from there. And Detroit and Ken Holland, that's not how he does things, and it's just coming to the fore more and more that this is not the way to have success in the NHL. I don't see them making the playoffs next year either, unless they are able to magically make some 45-goal scorer appear on their roster and get a better defense, and that's not going to happen.
No, Ken Holland will be on his way out of Detroit to possibly Seattle. Again, the Red Wings are going to have to find a new general manager and a new head coach. Jeff Blashill pulled Jimmy Howard for an empty net way too early and at the absolute wrong time, which allowed the empty net goal against the Minnesota Wild. Jeff Blashill's gotten even worse.
Yeah, that was a strange time to pull Howard. The Wild had just scored to go up 3-1.
Stupid.
And made it a 2-goal margin. And then immediately Blashill brings Howard to the bench in hopes of mounting a comeback. Well, you don't have any momentum. That kind of play is probably best reserved for maybe you're down 3 and then you go up 2, or you go down 2, you get a goal to go down 2. And you got some momentum. You got the other team operating a little bit on its heels. But the Wild were coming strong. They scored the goal to make it 3-1, and then they pull Howard, and it didn't take him very long to put it back into the empty net and effectively end the game at that point. So a misstep there by Blashill to pull Howard that early, especially the way that the Red Wings have been playing. And I'm not going to say it cost them because they were going to lose the game anyway, but it was a real strange sight to see him pull that early in hopes of getting a couple of goals.
Yeah, and at that point, the puck was in the neutral zone. The Red Wings didn't even have it anywhere in the offensive zone.
You're stupid.
No, I mean, like I said, they didn't have any momentum at all, and they were trying to make something out of nothing. The better play there is either keep Howard in, and if you have to pull him, we'll do it later in the period.
Or any time. How about this? How about any time they get it deeper in the offensive zone? Get into the offensive zone. Dump it in. Make sure you keep it in there so Howard can get out in plenty of time. So, that's Red Wings talk. Now we got 2 teams left to cover. First, we'll cover the Lions.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
The Lions have tagged defensive end Ezekiel Ansah, as their franchise player. Now, the last 2 or 3 months, there's been talk about the Lions contemplating tagging Ansah as their franchise player. They consider. The team and the media had considered how injury-prone he has been, but they decided, what the heck, just get it over with. Any analysis on that?
Well, the one thing you have to look at is the free agent market. And when you look at the defensive end of market, it's not very strong. And yes, Ezekiel Ansah is going to come with a big price tag because that's one of the higher-paid positions on the field. Because teams like to have pass rushers, and they like to have dominant players at that position. So typically the scale will weigh a little bit more heavily that way, especially when you're talking about the franchise tag. And they weighed their options, and they didn't think that they had a real good shot at signing any of the players that were going to be available in the free agent class. And not only did they not think that, but they weren't going to be able to replace somebody like Ezekiel Ansah at that level. So the franchise tag for them was probably the best solution. So while a lot of of people were angered by it. A lot of people had some bad reactions to it. The fact of the matter is they weren't going to get anybody better. And yes, they're going to overpay him this year because of the franchise tag, but it gives them a year for him to really prove himself, and maybe in the draft they pick up a defensive end that can succeed him if indeed he is let go at the end of the year and is not re-signed. So I don't think it was a terrible move. I don't think it was the wrong move. I just think it's going to be the unpopular move because a lot of people didn't think that Ezekiel Ansah is worth that. Well, I don't think he's worth that either. But he's certainly not worth letting him walk away for nothing and having to have a patchwork defensive line, especially with a new coach. He wants to be able to have some versatility. And for all the injuries that Ezekiel Ansah has had, the one thing you can say is he is a versatile player. And Matt Patricia now can go to work his magic with Ezekiel Ansah and the rest of the defense, and let's see if he's able to make something with him. It gives him basically a one-year trial run at a slightly inflated price, and if it doesn't work out, then they can go on to next year, and either they have somebody that was drafted that is ready to take his place, or the free agent class gets a lot better in the next year, and they have a chance to spend some money on a true all-pro player or somebody that's poised to become an all-pro player.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be one of our two events in What's Your Great segment, and then the Tigers.
That one is long gone.
Left-handed prospect relief pitcher Travis Wood suffered a sprained knee in his first spring training appearance. Before that, which was last month, he suffered a splint in a bow hunting mishap. So that's 2 injuries already. So Travis Wood already becoming injury prone.
You blew it!
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that they brought on as a non-roster invitee, and they were hoping he could give them some innings. He's not an especially great pitcher, but he is an innings eater, a former starter. They were hoping he could be a long man out of the bullpen, but he is now injured, and that's not going to be something they can use. So, kind of back to the drawing board there. There's a lot of room for competition in that bullpen, and again, this is a team that's not going to be good. So, I don't think that when you're looking at the whole scheme of things, Travis Wood being injured isn't going to make them any worse than they were before he got hurt. It's just another bullpen arm that they're not going to have available to them, which means they're going to have to dip farther into the 40-man roster and find somebody that's going to be able to fill that role. Again, you're talking about a team that's probably going to lose close to 100 games or more, and if Travis Wood's not there, or if he is there, that's not going to make a big difference in whether they finish last place or not. So, it's not great for him, but when you're looking at the team, it's not something that's going to affect their finish because they weren't projected to be very good. And with Travis Wood leaving, they're going to have another spot now for competition in the bullpen. And there's still a lot of players that are looking to win those spots. So Travis Wood is knocked out of that race with the injury.
Yep. So, no 5-question segment this week, so we'll go straight to What's Your Grade.
Pencils down, everyone. It's time to find out what's your grade.
First off, the Red Wings trading Tomas Tatar to the Golden Knights for 3 draft picks. Buck, what's your grade?
Well, if we're looking at just on the basis of the move in a vacuum, I'm going to give that one a solid B, simply because it was a move that, even though it was something that people didn't really expect, it hadn't been talked about a whole lot. There was some steam being gained as the trade deadline neared that he might have been one of the players that has been being shopped, and they ended up moving to the Vegas Golden Knights. It's a good opportunity for Tomas Tatar because he's going to go from a very bad team to a very good team, and he's going to get to play in the playoffs. And really, for Las Vegas, it was a no-lose situation. They're giving up picks right now that, even though they've stockpiled picks after the expansion draft, they're working with some house money. They were able to trade their first-round pick this year, which the way it's going for them is going to be a very high pick in the NHL draft, so they're not losing a whole lot there. And they were able to throw in a couple of other picks to get Tomas Tatar, who, even though he's playing for a bad team, still has the talent to score 20 goals plus in the NHL, and that's something that you really like to have at playoff time for Detroit. It gives them some assets, gives them another pick in the first round, and any kick of the can in the draft when you're not a very good team is something good to have. So I'm going to give that one a B.
And then the Lions tagging Ezekiel Ansah as their franchise player.
Well, like I said before, it's not the move that a lot of people like, but it is the move that makes the most sense when you look at the free agent landscape of the NFL. So I'm going to give this one a B+. And the reason I'm going to give it a B+ is because there wasn't a whole lot of other options for the Detroit Lions. The only reason it's not going to get an A is just because of the fact that the price tag that comes with tagging him is going to be an inflated salary. Ezekiel Ansah, who made $8 billion last year, is going to jump to 18, which means that he's going to get a significant raise, obviously. And coming off a season where he was not effective, he was troubled by injury. He has really been troubled by that in his career. It's a risky move as far as paying a guy $18 million on your cap that may not pan out. But at the same time, when you're looking at what Matt Patricia has to work with and the players that he felt that they could have replaced him with, I don't think that there was a lot there. So I'm going to give it a B+ because they need a defensive end and they need somebody that can, when healthy, be an effective pass rusher, and that's what Ezekiel Ansah is. When he is healthy, he's a very good defensive end. He's not probably a top 5 defensive end, but he's going to get paid like one. But still, they weren't going to be able to replace him with somebody that was going to be of equal or better value. So I give it a B+ simply because it was the right move for them. It may not be the best one, it may not be the most attractive one, but it was the one that they had to make.
Yeah, that's just the only option they can have.
I love it.
So,
yeah, there's a lot more holes on that team that they need to pay attention to, other than defensive end. So they're going to pay a little bit for it, but now they can turn their attention to more pressing matters on their roster.
Yep. And with that said, that's our What's Your Grade segment. So for our audience, if they have a grade for each of those two events, post them in the comment bank in this episode, and please don't go out of line. That's episode 306 of the Week in Review. Before we sign off, we want to remind everyone to share this episode and our entire podcast on social media and have their friends share that as well, because we want to tell them that the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is searching for a wider local audience that is fans of sports. So please spread the word about the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast and its Facebook page, also its Twitter handle at Michigan_Truth. Buck, Geno, thanks for being here. We'll talk next week.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So I'm Taylor Phillips. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips. Buck Geno at BuckGeno3rd. Our new Twitter handle at Michigan_Truth. Subscribe to our Reddit account and like and share the Michigan Sports Truth Facebook page. We'll talk to you next week on episode 307. Thanks very much for listening and downloading and sharing. TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Bon appétit.
Mission complete.